In the year 1325, two powerful cities in medieval Italy went to war. Thousands of soldiers marched into battle. Armies clashed in a brutal fight that left the countryside covered in blood. And the reason for this war was a wooden bucket. Not gold, not land, not religion. A bucket stolen from a well. It sounds ridiculous, but nearly 700 years later, that bucket still exists, locked inside a tower in the city of Modena. And its story begins in one of the most dangerous places in medieval Europe. In the 1300s, Italy wasn't a country. It was a collection of powerful city-states, each one ruled by its own leaders, each one protected by massive stone walls. And almost all of them were constantly preparing for war. Trade disputes, political rivalries, religious conflict. Two of these cities were bitter rivals, Bologna and Modena. They were located only about 40 kilometers apart, close enough that their armies could reach each other. Then one night in 1325, something strange happened. A group of Modenese soldiers crossed into Bolognese territory. Raids like this were common. Sometimes soldiers stole livestock, sometimes they burned farms. But this raid would become famous for a very different reason. Because the soldiers stopped at a well, and they took something, a wooden bucket. To the soldiers from Modena, it was probably just a joke, a small act of mockery. But when the people of Bologna discovered what had happened, they were furious. The raid was humiliating. Enemy soldiers had crossed into their land, taken something from them, and escaped. Bologna demanded the bucket back. Modena refused. And suddenly, the situation escalated. Soon, both cities began preparing for war. And this would not be a small conflict. Bologna raised an army of nearly 30,000 soldiers, knights, infantry, crossbowmen. Modena could gather only around 7,000. On paper, Bologna had a massive advantage. But numbers don't always decide battles. On November 15th, 1325, the two armies met near a small village called Zappolino. The battlefield filled with thousands of soldiers, armor shining in the sunlight, war drums echoing across the hills. Bologna expected an easy victory. They outnumbered their enemy 4-1. But the battle did not go as planned. Instead of waiting to be surrounded, the soldiers of Modena attacked aggressively. Their smaller army fought with discipline and speed. And slowly, the massive army of Bologna began to collapse. Panic spread across the battlefield. Thousands of soldiers fled. Against all odds, Modena had won. But the story wasn't over. After their victory, the soldiers of Modena marched toward Bologna, not to capture the city, not to destroy it, but to deliver one final insult. They returned to the same well where the raid had happened, and they took another bucket. That bucket was brought back to Modena as a trophy. And incredibly, it's still there today, locked inside the famous bell tower known as the Ghirlandina, nearly 700 years later. A reminder that one of the strangest wars in history was fought over something unbelievably small. Of course, the war wasn't really about a bucket. The rivalry between Bologna and Modena had existed for decades. Politics, power, territory. The bucket was simply the spark that ignited the conflict. But history has a strange sense of humor. Because today, when people remember the war, they don't remember the politics. They remember the bucket.